President Trump's eventual appointee puts Kennedy right smack into the middle again.
That's Tom's memory of the Chief Justice boxing up the oath 8 years ago. They had to re-administer it to President Obama the next day. Hopefully it won't happen
guessing
again.
He's not going to try to do it from memory.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with the teleprompter there, Justice Roberts.
How quick do you all think that the President Trump will be moving on the Supreme Court pick?
Oh, he promised very quickly. I think this is something, and by the way, I wouldn't dawdle if I were him politically. This is something with confirmations and all this stuff. Get it done early, because it's going to be a painful process too politically, and you don't want to have that linger. There's the future person.
All right, here is the Trump family now.
It's very unusual. Jared Kushner, who is the son-in-law and a very successful New York businessman, is going to be in the White House with an official role. The question then is, who will listen to him, beginning with the president?
Kristen Welker is now looking down and at the VIP arrivals. Kristen?
Striking to see the Trump family members arrive, Lester. It's one of those moments, I think, for everyone here that it starts to feel increasingly more real. Another VIP who we just watched enter, Senator Bernie Sanders, and sort of reminds everyone of how hard fought this race was. He is, of course, the former rival of Hillary Clinton during the primary. We are highly anticipating her entrance. As you were discussing earlier, this will be the first time that she and President-elect Donald Trump are in the same space since that bitter campaign. So there are going to be a lot of eyes focused on her as well. President Obama has talked so much about the importance of the peaceful transfer of power, and that's something that really matters to the Clintons as well. So of course they are here because of former President Bill Clinton, but they think that this is part of their responsibility to this democracy. We've seen a number of other VIPs arrive, and that will continue. 1,600 in all on this platform, Lester.
All right, as we continue to watch folks make their way, we're also keeping a close eye on the left side of your screen where the Obamas and Trumps will be emerging shortly. Senator Ted Cruz there, who waged his own battle against Donald Trump for the Republican nomination, but has climbed on board and said today he's very excited about what's to come in Washington.
By the way, we saw Jared Kushner there, the son-in-law. Another interesting thing, he comes from a family that has deep Democratic Party ties. His father was one of the biggest and most important donors and supporters of a former Democratic governor of New Jersey named Jim McGreevey. And so there are non-ideological people that have a lot of influence on this president, and that is going to be an interesting dynamic, Hugh Hewitt, between the base of your party.
I agree. I saw Scott Walker earlier today going over and Reince Priebus arriving. There is a ideological conservatism in the White House. At the same time, Jared Kushner, Ivanka Trump, very valued advisors, are not known for being ideological. So I think it's an interesting White House, maybe the most interesting since Reagan brought me.
Here comes President Rosalind Carter.
Can I just tell you, Twitter had a wonderful bunch of passengers on a Delta flight.
You went and said hi to all of them.
President Carter, right, flew here commercially, by the way, folks, and shook everybody's hand. And in coach. Yeah, shook everybody's hand. He has, talk about medical recoveries, Tom.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I mean, how about this?
It is. I mean, he's cancer-free. And the fact is, it's a tribute to farm life. He's,
rural life. Both Dick Cheney and Jimmy Carter. And the rural America there.
We're in trouble.
It's also a tribute to his faith, as he will tell you.
And his wife.
It is very important to him. Yes, they're very, very strong. I saw her at Nancy Reagan's funeral, and I hadn't seen her for a while, but
Marco Rubio?
He's a young man looking for a future. Mark Rubio. But anyhow, Jimmy Carter has been an almost perfect ex-president in terms of his interest around the world, how he does it. The Carter Center is extremely well organized. It's not a show place.
And one of the most positive people I've interviewed. I've had a chance to interview him a number of occasions, and just what a great outlook on life. This
ideological question, though, is so interesting on a day like today, where we've been talking about how half the country is elated, the other half is beyond despair. You know, I have a lot of people in my Twitter feed, oh, I can't watch, sorry, I'll tune in next week. I mean, this is this impulse in Donald Trump to not be ideological could be some sort of ray of hope. He has said kind things about Planned Parenthood. He has said things that are more closely aligned with Democrats on trade, on infrastructure, on foreign policy. So it's going to be interesting to see if Jared Kushner takes on the role of protecting the president's impulses and instincts and preserving those places where he doesn't want to fall in line behind Republican orthodoxy, or whether he tries to sort of round off those edges and move him more closer to the Republican establishment.
He's a populist through and through. If there has been, he's a populist through and through. He has an ear. Chris Matthews has a great line about him. He says he thinks Donald Trump has the best ear going right now in politics. And the person that helps him with that ear, not just Jared Kushner, Steve Bannon, who's also not ideological.
Like Dr. Jill Biden, emerging now from the White House. And we would expect to see the Obamas and Trump shortly.
Keep track of the Bidens. I think Joe Biden is going to be the Democrat that speaks out the most for a while. More so than in the same way, if you remember, former Vice President
Dick Cheney did.
for that first year was sort of as the Republicans were searching for a leader. I have a feeling Biden's going to fill that vacuum for a little while.
Yeah.
Well, I have a personal hope. I hope that he'll stay as well in Moonshot, which the launch for cancer. He's deeply committed because of Beau and other cases that he knows about, and he's worked very hard at understanding. Boy, there's a contrast for you right there, Bernie Sanders.
By the way, that was Karen Pence we saw walk out with Dr. Biden. And here now, the First Lady and the soon-to-be First Lady.
This is the stuff that's just sort of a history junkie. I love that split screen we were just showing. People come in the Capitol. It's living history, folks.
And reading the expressions and body language.
I put my own.
Figuring out what was said behind the scenes.
Don't you put your own thought bubbles on there?
Right.
So let's remember that Ivana Trump, for all the talk that he had about immigration, is the American story. She's an immigrant.
Melania Trump. Yeah.
Melania Trump, who came here as an immigrant, married Donald Trump, and is now going to become the First Lady of the United States. That doesn't happen anywhere else in the world, and you have to keep that in mind.
And we're waiting for President Obama and President-elect Trump. But first...
and they're matching blue ties. Almost.
Vice President Biden and soon-to-be Vice President Mike Pence.
They've known each other, obviously, because Pence was in Congress, and Joe Biden has a good regard for him.
Oh, and the two of them have gone. Vice President Pence said they've. It's not perfunctory. They have spent deep amounts of time with each other. You know, Vice President Biden giving him basically his own tour of the world to the next Vice President Pence.
I heard another, one of Donald Trump's principal economic advisors said yesterday he had a very good meeting with Valerie Jarrett, who called him in and gave him kind of a brief on what you can expect and what the difficulties are.
You know, one thing I think might be said is that, you know, we've heard a lot in this campaign about technology and what that does to people's jobs all around the country. And just to give you a sense of the pace of technology, 100 years ago, this year, Woodrow Wilson was inaugurated for a second term, and he came out of that front door and he got into a horse-drawn carriage and rode it all the way up to the Capitol, just 100 years ago.
And here the door swings open, and there is President Obama and President-elect Donald Trump. Now, he arrived in a armored SUV. He is about to step into what's affectionately known as the Beast, the presidential limousine. Another reminder of the transfer of power. He arrived in Washington on an Air Force plane, not his private 757. So it is all becoming very, very real in small steps. And about an hour from now, one large step with the swearing in.
Those ties mean that they're the leaders of red and blue America.
Looks like it, yeah.
President Clinton and Secretary Hillary Clinton.
But their wives are wearing the reverse, so there you have it.
Outreach.
So, Michael, have we heard any stories along the way of what occurs in this short car ride?
Usually people getting along pretty well, and that was particularly the case in the first one of these, which was 1837, when Andrew Jackson was riding with the new president, who happened to be his vice president, Martin Van Buren. They were on great terms, but it has not always been that way. Franklin Roosevelt defeated President Herbert Hoover. 1933, they rode up to the Capitol. Roosevelt kept on trying to engage Hoover in conversation, and Hoover so detested Roosevelt and was so depressed he barely spoke. And so finally Roosevelt was reduced to saying, "Look at that building being built over there, what wonderful steel."
As we look at this picture, of Hillary Clinton, your mind just can't help go there to what she's thinking. She and so many people thought that this would be her day. And at the same time, what an important symbol this is of what I keep coming back to, this peaceful transfer of power.
And let's not beat around the bush. I don't know if she's over it. I know it took her a long time. I know that, and I don't think she is in some respects. And especially when you pick up your New York Times today and you see that story about the idea that the Russian investigation continues, and every time one of those stories hits, you hear through that grapevine that it stings her a little bit more.
She got more votes than any losing candidate in history, almost 3 million more in the popular vote. And you're right, it's got to sting.
Her choice will be very interesting, how she lives the next 4 years and what she decides to involve herself in the politics of the day. And no clues yet, I don't believe, from anyone as to how she intends to do that.
And the motorcade is on the move now, leaving the White House grounds, making the short drive to the Capitol, where a very short time from now, Donald Trump will become the next president of the United States. There's former President Bush.
You know, the Bushes and the Clintons have become friends, and one thing that might make it a little easier today on the Clintons is that friendship between George W. Bush and Laura Bush and the Clintons. And, I said this before, none of the former presidents on that stage will have voted for Donald Trump. So
when you said that before, Nicole, I have to say it was sort of like, it was a wonderful observation, but it really hit me like a sledgehammer. It is such an, it did. This is why I think there has been a difficult time to unify the political world around this moment.
And probably very healthy, because I think the people that voted for Donald Trump and put him over the edge wanted a shakeup of establishment politics, not just Republican or Democrat.
A big piece of why they voted for him, quite honestly. Going by the Treasury Department now, on their way to, we'll be looking at the west side of the Capitol, which was the Ronald Reagan innovation for this day. You want to be sworn in with the Capitol looking west as a son of the West.
This is a round trip for Donald Trump. The next time he'll be going the opposite direction, and he will be President Donald Trump.
I must say that as a reporter, of course I was never on that, but I would go as part of the pool to the Capitol for the State of the Union address. It was very exciting. It was one of those things you look around and say, wow. I picked the right profession after all. All the excitement of going up to the Capitol, the anticipation, and you're in the presidential limousine. I've ridden with presidents before, and the back, and you're knee to knee with the Secret Service there as well, because
right.
They slip in and they've got a jump seat.
So it's not as private as you think it is.
And by the way, in a moment he will be passing his new hotel, which was I believe his first stop when he arrived in Washington yesterday.
We're talking about the limo. It's called the Beast because it's so heavy, and when presidents fly overseas, they have to take the Beast with them. There's a cargo plane that literally flies the motorcade to any foreign country, but yeah, they are.
I had a chance to step inside the one that preceded this one.
Yeah.
When that door closes, it's just a steep boom, and you feel like you're in a sealed chamber.
Yeah.
So Michael, they don't go down.
Tamron Hall is right by the Trump Hotel. Tamron?
Hey there, we are right by the Trump Hotel. Within a few minutes here, we should see what you were referring to as the Beast carrying the president-elect and President Obama. The next route back from the Capitol, Donald Trump will be the 45th president of the United States, with his hotel perhaps being the first time that the president steps out to greet some of the people who are just to my left, who've strategically placed themselves in front of Trump Hotel, formerly the main post office for Washington, D.C. I'm now hearing cheers here. So as the motorcade passes with the president-elect, his family, the soon-to-be First Lady as well. We see Dr. Jill Biden there, and there is Melania Trump with First Lady Michelle Obama, and you see there Mike Pence. I'm trying to step out of the way so you can see more here, and there you have it. The president-elect and the current president headed now to our nation's capital. When they make this or when the route returns, we will have President Donald Trump.
All right, Tamara, in that hotel, and not a small matter, in the broader conversation about potential conflicts that this president will face from the moment he
takes the oath.
He takes the oath.
No, there's a reason they can't do a direct shot on Pennsylvania Avenue, Michael, and it has to do with a president that maybe Donald Trump is most modeled after, Andrew Jackson.
Andrew Jackson, and he did so much to change this capital. And that's the argument that the Trump people make, that this is a new Andrew Jackson, and there is a lot about Andrew Jackson, I guarantee you, that does not remind us very much of Donald Trump, but one thing does, and that is that Jackson was the one who said, essentially, elect me and I will end this period in which the White House has been held by the elites, the aristocrats. I will bring in the common people, to the point that on Inauguration Day, they opened the White House to everyone. They came in and trashed the place and broke the furniture.
Apparently, the Trump transition at least inquired about doing something similar. There is an affinity for Jackson.
They were breaking the windows and having fistfights on the lawn.
Exactly right.
It was the frontier all over.
We saw a picture a moment ago of the crowds passing by. Imagine what life is like as a president. Your whole view on the ground is in a motorcade. And everywhere you go, you will see people waving. You will see crowds gathered. I had the privilege of being in the Obama motorcade a couple of times last week when we were working on our interview about his legacy. And that was one of the things that struck me. 8 years. That's how you see the world.
Yeah.
You're in a world, there's no such thing as a stoplight. There's no such thing as waiting in line.
There's no such thing. When after 9/11 and TSA started making you take your shoes off, George Bush was already president, obviously. And I ran into the Oval Office. I was late. I said my flight was late. It takes forever now to take off my shoes. Thanks a lot for that, Mr. President. And he said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "What am I talking about?" I said, gosh, bleep, bleep, TSA makes you strip naked, and because of you, and you really do live in this sort of rarefied. Well, he knew, but he hadn't experienced.
No one faults him. No one faults him.
Right.
It's the reality.
It's for their own security.
That's what that life is like,
But in Marine, you take a helicopter to go to an airport, to go to New York City, you land in Wall Street, and you complain about traffic, and they look at you like you're crazy.
Dwight Eisenhower, when he left the presidency, went back to his house in Gettysburg, picked up the telephone, heard this buzz, which was a dial tone. He had never heard one. For the previous 20 years, he would pick up the telephone, there'd be an operator, and he'd say, get me Joe Smith.
Right. The other thing is that Donald Trump has had more than a little experience riding in a limousine. I mean, this is not
correct, and a private airplane.
And a private airplane.
Well, no, that is a concern that actually some folks around Trump have, that he does. Here's a guy that was elected supposedly having this common touch, but he actually doesn't interact that much. Hasn't. Will interact even less so as president, just because of the nature of the way the job.
Just Governor Chris Christie, who was seen for quite a while as being a potential rising star and having some major role in this administration.
The transition process is sort of a mess with a lot of finger pointing, some in Chris Christie's direction and some supporters of Chris Christie in the other direction. That's sort of why it's a mess, right?
Right. As you know, he ran the process for Chris Christie from that job and basically started the work anew.
We were looking at the picture of Hillary Clinton a moment ago. She tweeted here recently. I'll read the tweet. She says, "I'm here today to honor our democracy and its enduring values. I will never stop believing in our country and its future." #Inauguration. So if you're wondering what's on her mind, that was the tweet she issued a short time ago, as we see President and Laura making their way down and being greeted by folks.
And actually, her tweet echoes the words of Al Gore when he conceded the election of 2000, when he said, "For the sake of our democracy, I offer my concession."
And our thoughts, of course, with President H.W. Bush, who remains hospitalized in Houston after a health scare this week. But obviously,
we've heard nothing but good news from Jenna earlier today on the Today Show. So we're very excited to hear that.
And obviously, the situation is such that President Bush could make this journey.
I'm sure they're watching.
And here the arrival of the motorcade now to the Capitol, where they'll go in. And Chris Jansing is there. Chris?
Dramatic images of the peaceful transition of power with the current president and the president-elect now arriving at what is known as the carriage entrance. This is a practice that dates back, Lester, to 1837 with the current and soon-to-be president riding together in the same vehicle. It's worth noting that President Obama, of course, retains power now until the oath of office is given. There is, in fact, a skeleton staff at the White House right now. But this is the moment that we have been waiting for. They will arrive through the doors here, greeted by an inaugural committee, military cordon. There are Senate and House sergeants at arms who are here waiting for them. I see Michelle Obama closest to me and Melania Trump, soon to be First Lady, being directed around one of these vehicles here. They will go up these stairs and through the door. And this is a very finely timed event. They will go into holding rooms. Anyone who has ever been to the Capitol, who's taken a tour of the Capitol, there is a place in the center of it that has 13 statues representing the 13 colonies. It is called the Crypt. They will go in those holding rooms and wait for the symbol, the sign, to go out. But they're having a conversation right now. You can see the First Ladies together, getting some directions from people, also some pleasantries. They've worked closely with members of this inaugural committee and obviously the transition committee. They will go up the stairs, through the doors, down the hall, and once that hold is over, of course, the last person who will go out will be President-elect Donald J. Trump. He will walk down a set of 35 stairs. I walked it just the other day. There will be, right before he goes through the red curtains, a mirror that is hanging on the wall. A member of the inaugural committee said to me, that's the last checkpoint where he can see how he looks.
There's Pete Souza.
And then he will go to take the oath.
And here we see them entering inside the Capitol. President-elect Trump, President Obama.
Speaker Ryan.
Let's listen, see if we can pick up some of the
Hello. Hello, everybody.
Are you going to reverse the immigration order in the next few days?
God bless our fellow colleagues here, getting that shouted question in.
Okay, Laura, we're moving.
But to the question, we are going to be looking for some reversals here in the next several days.
Don't expect it today. I find it somewhat unusual that they have talked that Monday should be viewed as the first real day of the presidency.
The Pences.
That they're not going to do this, quote, hit the ground running aspect today. There'll be a couple of orders, but it's really Monday that they're building towards.
One of the key aides, however, told me that he would not be surprised if they were challenged on the weekend in some form, economically or otherwise.
We can talk about the one challenge that everybody's concerned about, and that's that North Korea, they are anticipating a test launch of some form.
Here are the Trump children. There's Ivanka and Tiffany and Donald Jr. and Eric Trump. Somber faces as they prepare to step out and watch their father become the next president of the United States.
And Barron there, too.
Was Barron? Yeah, Barron.
You know, Chuck was talking a moment ago about the possibility of a challenge from North Korea. We talked about the symbolic importance of a smooth transition, but one thing that's developed in recent years is that the old president and the new president and their people have national security exercises so that if, God forbid, something like this happens 1 minute after the oath taking, the new president and his staff will be a little bit more up to speed.
And these are post 9/11 reforms. You know, I was talking with Andy Card, who was the chief of staff for George W. Bush, and he was talking about they put in some new in order to make this transition smoother. And he said that the Obama administration sort of enhanced it even more. They did an exercise last week. It was basically both teams. They did a essentially practice emergency exercise, as you call, and that is a sobering moment for all of the advisors. That's the first time they feel the weight of what they're about
As we look at the kids come in here, it's worth noting Ivanka Trump was asked point blank about whether she would serve as the pseudo first lady, and she shut that down very quickly.
And emphatically so, almost saying that's insulting.
Yeah, it had been talked about a lot. I think it's the first time she got to answer that. So she will have no official role in this White House. And there is the view. Hallie Jackson has got a great view looking onto that west front where all this is taking place. Hallie, what are you seeing?
Hi, Lester. We are just across from the view that you are showing now on a media riser filled with hundreds of journalists here to witness this. Just a little bit of color from the ground here. As people are watching on the monitors, every time they see a shot of, for example, the president-elect or his family, a big cheer goes up. There have been announcements now as each of the former living presidents has walked in, President Carter and then President Bush and President Clinton as well. I'll tell you that the senators who have gathered here on the platform are doing what a lot of folks in the crowd are doing, and that is picking up their phone and taking pictures and selfies. Lester?
Okay, and here I believe it's the first time the public is seeing the Trump children. I believe they're about to walk out into the public view. There they are. And you can hear that applause. Let's listen.
See, even the chief of staff is doing photos there. That's pretty.
One of the folks I interviewed this week is texting me from the crowd. He said there were polite cheers for Hillary Clinton when she walked out from the Trump supporters gathered on the Mall. It's a nice sentiment.
And which leads to one of the questions I wanted to ask later on, but let's ask it now. Would you expect, as President Trump, to name her in his speech? And
he should. I would hope so. He has nothing to lose and everything to gain by trying to grow his support by being gracious.
But I'm sorry.
Nothing to lose.
I'm shocked that they haven't had a private meeting.
Right, and they
lunch,
used to know
coffee.
each other. I mean,
that's right. She went to his wedding.
Yeah.
This is, I think, the biggest mistake he made during the transition.
Yeah.
Look, she may not have wanted to do it, but there's no way she could have turned down that invitation from the president-elect. His decision, the fact that they haven't done it yet, I just think was
keep in mind,
as a mistake.
Keep in mind, he never fully closed the door on prosecuting her. He said, it's not something we're to deal with now. But remember, he had thrown that out before the election. And
well, it is. I'm glad to hear that about the crowd. I don't, I think we were discussing earlier, with the crowd, how would the crowd, would it feel like a Trump campaign rally? Would we start hearing some chants that we'd gotten used to during the campaign? And my feeling is no. I think I don't care who you are as an American citizen, you walk into this Capitol this week and democracy is just raining on you.
Yeah.
And you start thinking as an American, not as a partisan.
And Nicole, I don't know if you heard this, but when I was touring the country, and one woman said it so articulately. She is against Donald Trump. She was for Clinton, but she said, I hear all this, not my president. She goes, he is my president.
Yeah, we all.
She says, I've got to root for my president to succeed.
And where you hear that is in the military. And Donald Trump did really well among military families and among veterans, but he didn't win them all. But they have to live that. They don't get to just say it. The rest of us get to say it. They have to live with this man as their commander-in-chief. And so it really is. I know people that say it mean it, and they are really still hurting. They feel despondent about the outcome, but it's not a particularly productive sentiment.
Yeah, and there is some of the crowd. A lot of folks. I know the Park Service and others they don't like to get into the crowd counting business. I think there was talk of anywhere from 700,000 to 900,000 to come and witness this. There are protests in various parts of town. There were threats to.
We'll get a crowd estimate from somebody.
Somebody will get.
I think Donald Trump.
I think the president. That's who I was referring to, Nicole. We'll get an official estimate, perhaps from the podium.
We may get some new poll numbers, you guys. It's a report on how we're doing in the coverage of the event. I mean, he's still Donald Trump.
Yeah. Katie Tur is down in the crowd right now as we look. I think that was Eric Trump. Katie, what is the mood down there like that? People have been staked out for a while.
Yeah, they've been here for quite a while, and they're covered in ponchos. They're wearing hats. They're cold, but they're clearly very excited. You know, I was wondering as well what the reaction would be when Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton walked down. And while there wasn't a large cheer in the same way there was for George W. Bush, there was not anybody who was jeering in any way at Hillary Clinton. They said to me that they believe that this was probably a pretty hard moment for her. They acknowledged that. But these people are Trump voters. They're the ones that put him into the office. They're the ones that they feel defied the odds, and they feel very vindicated right now. And now they're going to start chanting USA, which is obviously what we heard quite a bit of on the campaign trail.
What can you see with the naked eye from where you are? People mainly seeing this on a jumbotron, or can they see anything?
So what? No. So we have a really good view. I'll show you. We're like at the foot of the dais. So we have a bird's eye, not bird's eye. We have a direct view of Donald Trump, easy to see. But there's also a big screen over here, so they can see people that are walking down the stairs. They can see faces a little bit more clearly. Faces of Donald Trump's cabinet. There was a number of cheers as Donald Trump's cabinet took the stage. They asked people to move out of the way so they could see the big screens. But they have a great view of Donald Trump and how he will be taking the oath of office. In terms of the crowd and how far it extends, guys, you have a better idea of that because you're going to see it on various shots. But it does look pretty filled to me here. These folks have been waiting now for hours. They are excited, of course. This is a day that they hoped they would see come, and it's a day that they feel they deserved. Back to you.
All right, that's an incredible picture right there of the mall, and folks gather now to watch.
I can't wait till our folks will speed up. You know, we do those speed things we've been watching all morning. The crowd filling in. We've been watching all morning. You know, it's 7 a.m. As you might expect, stragglers, and every half hour it's been kind of neat to watch it fill in.
Yeah, and I think Jacob Soboroff is near the far end of the mall. Jacob, what are you seeing?
Festivities are going to take place in just a little bit. You can see the Capitol building all the way down there in the distance. But if you walk with me, I want to show you there are supporters that have filled in all the way down to the back. When President Obama was first inaugurated in 2009, 1.8 million people were here. It was an all-time record. They went all the way back, if I can actually show you this way, to the Washington Monument. It's not quite as filled up here right now, but everybody has been watching each and every moment from, I guess, what you would call the nosebleeds up on these television monitors here. We can see what you guys can see up close and personal from about 1.1 miles away. Security is very tight. Part of the reason that it took such a long time for people to fill in here, but the crowds are finally coming, and they're certainly enthusiastic.
Jacob Soboroff, thank you very much. And just to recap, if you're just tuning in, President Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama and the Trumps have now arrived at the Capitol. They are in a holding room. Virtually all the VIPs have taken their place on the platform on the West Front, and we will be getting underway quite shortly. I think 11:30 Eastern is when the ceremony itself begins. And there's some of the notables, of course, President Bush, Secretary Clinton, and President Clinton, so many members of Congress. It is, of course, been noted that a number of members of Congress have chosen to boycott this gathering today. I think the last number I heard was around 60 or so.
Following the late John Lewis.
Yeah, mainly in reaction to the flap that John Lewis had. And his comments he made to you originally about
that's right.
the legitimacy of the
and an untold number of people around the country before we get to Kumbaya here are not watching and are still very angry.
There's going to be a large protest in this town tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, and not an insignificant one on that same mall.
Apparently they're beginning
the women's march all over the country.
Yeah.
Women are marching all
over.
So
let's not forget there are people who look at her 3.5 million or 3 million vote margin and the whole Russian hacking episode, and they have not given up.
And here is First Lady Michelle Obama being escorted now, along with Dr. Jill Biden.
Right. I believe that was Paul Pelosi.
They've been very close. They've been working on veterans issues, the two of them. They have a high regard for one another, and they've gone to different bases and had seminars and other...
and Dr. Biden has continued to teach. I was on an event with her within the last year, and I said, what are you looking most forward to when it's over? She goes, jogging alone. I remember she says, it's weird jogging along, and she says you end up getting competitive with the Secret Service agents.
And they're
running
really
as well.
fit.
Yeah, and they're really fit. And she said, I just want to be able to run alone.
And by the way, vice presidents lose their Secret Service detail fairly quickly. Obviously, former presidents never lose it. So Michelle Obama and Barack and former they'll never fully be alone again. And that is a hard thing for former presidents to.
We should check this. I thought there was at some point they were going to limit. I'll have somebody check into the limit how long, how many years.
At Kennebunkport, there's still a full complement of Secret Service.
I had a college classmate who was a Secret Service agent for President Ford. That was very good duty.
Yeah.
You were at Vail in the wintertime for skiing. You were in Palm Springs in the springtime.
Remember bumping into Lady Bird Johnson not that long ago at the Roosevelt Memorial. I was just there with my family, and there she was, and there were two agents.
Yeah.
Well, this is going to be a large first family. There's Rick Perry, Governor Perry. This will be a large first family to protect because they live in separate places, and all but one are adults.
And it is interesting. Actually, we talk about security. There's a big question about the Trump-branded buildings. What extra security? How much does the government? This is actually something that still hasn't quite been worked out yet. In national security circles on this
Ladies
issue
and
of
gentlemen,
security at
the
Trump
First
buildings.
Lady, Mrs. Michelle Obama, and the wife of the Vice President, Dr. Jill Biden, escorted by the Democratic Staff Director of the United States Senate Committee on Rules and Administration, Kelly Fado, Miss Irish Weinschall, and Mr. Paul Pelosi.
As they take their seats, Michael Beschloss has been looking at the security around the Trump Hotel,
which is apparently very strong with barricades and hundreds of police officers and Marines.
This is a remarkable picture, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is the stuff I love. And Michael, you must just get you. Trust me, there's no Twitter feed to follow like Michael Beschloss's feed because of the wonderful photographs, the images you share with such a great eye, and I could just picture you tweeting out this image in 5 years,
right?
In 10 years,
or 25,
can't wait to know what's on all of their minds. What you were saying earlier, Chuck. We're imagining those thought bubbles, and you can imagine pretty hard, but I'm sure the reality will be different.
Well, we talked about the Clinton and Bush relationship. Mrs. Obama and George W. Bush were last together at the memorial service in Dallas, and they were holding hands and swaying to some of the hymns at the end. So the Bushes have gotten to know Clintons and the Obamas quite well. I have to say something about Mrs. Obama and her contributions to fashion because I'm sitting next to 4 men in blue suits.
Non-fashionable.
Yeah.
No, I didn't. You look great, but you are all wearing the same suit. But Mrs. Obama has been
an occupational hazard, Nicole.
She's been known the world over and watched the world over for picking out designers, young and upcoming designers. And Melania Trump is a beautiful woman and obviously a fashion icon, a former model. But it'll be interesting to see if that is her practice. Women care about stuff like this, you guys.
Okay.
Y'all looking at me dumbfounded.
Come on, I want Nicole.
Thank you.
I'm not.
Get a thumbs up from the women in the studio.
But name the designer she's wearing. I'll know you really have a good eye if you can name them.
I don't know who Michelle Obama is, but she wears a lot of. She wears J. Crew. She wears high end. That's why people love her.
I'm sure people have already tweeted out where to buy what she's wearing right now.
And Melania wearing Ralph Lauren.
The first family will soon be able to shed their coats. They're heading to California for a little warmth after this.
And that echoes Gerald Ford, who in 1977 did exactly the same thing. Got on the
went to Palm Springs, right?
Went to Palm Springs and was in a golf tournament that afternoon.
Yeah.
It is. That is a hobby that, Barack Obama wasn't into golf before he became president. He realized golfing was one of the few chances you got to walk alone a little bit. Perhaps it was a place that maybe you could sneak a cigarette or two. Not saying that is what would happen, hint, hint, before he quit.
Be outside.
But he'd be outside. And can I tell you, he now loves the sport.
We haven't seen a lot of Melania Trump. She did not make many campaign appearances. She famously spoke at the Republican National Convention, but has kept a rather low profile during this entire campaign and the transition.
Remember,
she's going to step out on the world's biggest stage.
She has a 10-year-old son, and I think she's worked really hard during that campaign to make sure, she was mother to her son during this period where, his father was having to travel the country, so I think
She's also very shy, and her foray at the convention was a wonderful performance of a halfway plagiarized speech. It was a humiliating experience for her, and really not her fault. It's a staff's fault to protect the principal from stuff like that. So I'm sure she's hoping that Take Two is more successful.
And there's their youngest son, Barron.
And it's our understanding they'll probably finish the school year in New York. Totally understandable. On that front.
Ladies and
It's a
gentlemen,
tough decision for any
Mrs. Melania
parent.
Trump
Go
and Mrs.
mid-year or
Karen
not.
Pence,
Okay, here's the
Secretary of the Senate, Julie Adams, the Clerk of the House of Representatives, Karen Haas, Mrs. Abigail Blunt, Mrs. Jana Ryan, the Honorable Elaine L. Chao, and Mrs. Judy McCarthy.
Looking at the juxtaposition of former Vice President Dick Cheney, and just in front of him, just to his right, is Mrs. Obama. Of course, Dick Cheney was particularly tough on this president and on this administration, saying no president in American history has done more to aid our adversaries, which for someone who is so involved in the launch of the war against Iraq, a lot of people were stunned by that judgment and conclusion of him. So it's we haven't seen Donald Rumsfeld, by the way.
And here's the president and vice president.
Speaker and the Democratic leader of the Senate.
And for most of American history, you could never see this kind of thing behind the scenes, both because there was no television, also for last decades, television was oftentimes not of this quality.
By the way, Nancy Pelosi there is wearing a pin, a button, and many Democrats today are wearing that same button. I'm told it says hashtag protect our care. It is their way of just a quiet advocation of keeping essentially Obamacare.
Let's listen for a moment as they're about to be introduced.
Donald Trump always wears a red tie. Are you noticing that all the Democrats have blue ties on today?
And on the day that she conceded, Hillary Clinton wore purple and her husband wore a purple tie.
Let's listen. In a moment, the introduction of President Obama and President-elect Trump.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, the Honorable Barack H. Obama, and the Vice President Joseph R. Biden, escorted by Senate Democratic Secretary Gary Myrick, Senate Democratic Leader and Rules Committee Ranking Member Charles E. Schumer, and House Democratic Leader Nancy Pelosi.
The last time Hail to the Chief will be played before President Obama as president.
Yes,
Is that one of the Trump daughters?
That's both, huh? The entire Trump family there.
So Dan Quayle, former vice president.
We actually are going to hear from Barack Obama one last time today. He will be speaking as an ex-president over at Andrews.
That's correct.
Sometime later this afternoon, obviously.
An exchange between President Bush and President Obama.